All right, here we go. Welcome. We're nice and amped up. This is good. All right, heated discussion. Probably Popeyes are in there. That, oh man, wow. Okay, Popeyes, gross. Okay, anyone at home, feel free to put into chat your thoughts on that too. Wow. Okay. I think, growing up in the Newcomb household, when mom put the Popeye in front of you, you had two choices: eat it or go hungry, and you just decide, I'm gonna eat it. You just do it. Oh boy. No, yeah. The dog would normally eat just about anything. But I remember when my mom started working the night shift at the phone company, and my dad attempted to make dinner. And one time you ever have like a dish called goulash? Yeah. All right. Normally that's, we're all over it. We're all over it. Newcomb kids, we're all over it. I have no idea what dad put in it, and it's bad when the dog doesn't eat it, but you just do it, and we just pleaded with mom, before you go to work, or give us the recipe and we'll make the dinner. So that prompted us Newcomb kids learning how to make meals and all that stuff. So there we go. Popeyes. Oh my gosh. Ashley doesn't like them. Okay. Maybe you just haven't had the right Popeye. Don't like them at all. Okay. All right. Understandable. All right. So here we go. So today we'll continue with our study of the Cold War, and I'll give you some time to focus on the Cold War crises that you're looking at, the three of them. I just want to remind you, again, we're coming near the end of this trimester, and probably, for seniors, if you're on like the bubble of passing or not passing, it's probably going to be very important that you get off that bubble and get onto it. Eventually, people in the counseling are going to ask us to submit names to those seniors who might be at risk. All right. So to avoid that, and when I mean at risk of perhaps jeopardizing graduation and all those things, all right, that go with it. So if you are in that, reach out. We'll find ways for success. And so we don't have to worry about, that question mark. All right. So I know heavy duty stuff to think about. We're in April, but eventually it's going to be nice. All right. One thing I've been talking a little bit about earlier in the week, with climate change and nuclear waste. I do have a video clip here I want to share with you about the development of nuclear weapons, and in terms of attitudes toward it and how it impacts policies. So give me about 10-15 minutes here. I got a video clip, and then I want us to talk a little bit about the issue, and then we'll have some time for our Cold War crises activity. All right. Any questions before we start, though? All right, here we go. There we go. A nice Titan missile there. That's big stuff. So here we go. Let's play it.
American Titan missiles, each with a warhead that could destroy Moscow, were ready to be launched.
It would be done before we had time to stop and think about what we were doing. It doesn't take all that long, and it was just automatic. There was no question in our mind that this was the thing to do.
If we had ever received a launch message over the PAS system, would have had absolutely no doubt that my life expectancy was measured in probably less than a half an hour. And the only question was, would we be able to launch this missile before the incoming hit us?
Pearl Harbor was still a painful wound in the American psyche. In Alaska, Greenland, and England, ballistic missile early warning radars were in operation. America did not want to be surprised again.
The Cold War was a war that went on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We felt that they were trying to take over the world, and actually we were one of their largest stumbling blocks in that effort. Therefore, we were one of the primary enemies, and the primary target was to take over our country.
They were banging it into our heads, and we couldn't have imagined otherwise. The Americans were aggressors who wanted to conquer the whole world, and we had to protect the world.
In 1961, the new American president, John Kennedy, had taken office in a tense nuclear world. He inherited from Eisenhower the doctrine of massive retaliation.
The term massive retaliation, as it was understood at the end of the 1950s and the beginning of the 1960s, was a policy of responding to major Soviet conventional attacks, for example, in Western Europe, should that have occurred, with a massive nuclear response.
Massive retaliation had been conceived at a time of clear American superiority. Now, the Russians were trying to catch up.
There was a syndrome to catch up and overtake, to try and show everyone that we weren't far behind the Americans, that we too had nuclear weapons. There were those who said that we can only prevent a nuclear war if we oppose world imperialism with a force of similar strength.
Khrushchev sought a dramatic means to remind the West of the power of the Soviets. He broke a moratorium on nuclear testing. October the 30th, 1961. A Russian bomber crew were preparing to drop the largest bomb the world had ever seen.
Одна.
The explosion was the equivalent of more than 50 million tons of TNT, more than all the explosives used in World War II. "50 miles away, people were blown off their feet. Khrushchev said he wanted the bomb to hang like the sword of Damocles over the imperialists' heads. Kennedy took up the challenge.
In view of the Soviet action, it will be the policy of the United States to proceed in developing nuclear weapons to maintain this superior capability for the defense of the free world against any aggressor.
To Kennedy's anger, the super bomb was just one of a series of Soviet nuclear tests.
I remember counting down the seconds, then dropping the bomb. We had to put on special glasses and pull down curtains to protect us against the radiation. We'd put on the glasses, but we'd forget to draw the curtains as we wanted to have a peek. Suddenly, there'd be something like a rising sun. The clouds disperse, and you see a beautiful, beautiful picture, like in a fairy tale. A mushroom growing up and up. It's on top of you, and you're going underneath. The instruments measuring the level of radiation went right off the scale. But of course, we forgot about that. Then suddenly there is a huge blow as the shockwave hits the plane. All the controls go crazy, and you have to grab the joystick and quickly try and get it under control. The plane was thrown from side to side. We knew what a nuclear explosion was like.
It became obvious that the Russians were just, there was no containing them. They were shooting not just this big bomb, but lots and lots of them. And we essentially did the same thing. We went and, we got bombs from wherever we could find them and took them to Nevada and shot them just in order to respond to these Russian tests. It was a crazy period.
So Nevada was our area that we would do quite a bit of testing, of course, all in the Pacific Ocean as well. Would also be an area which we would do some nuclear testing. And of course, when we talk about like the fallout of testing nuclear weapons, as these weapons are detonated, it gets up into the atmosphere. So once it gets up in the atmosphere, the winds are going to take it far, far away. So it's very well plausible that in New Mexico, the bombs are going off, but potentially some of that fallout may actually even make it up here to Minnesota, depending on how intense the winds were and the conditions, all that stuff. And of course, if it seemed to not go as planned, you would get some notification of such a thing like that. That becomes part of our everyday life. All right. So any reactions just to that little clip? Any thoughts about that clip? Yeah, go ahead. Well, these bombs are going to be they have to be detonated at a certain height. And so I think that parachute, what's that? No, not necessarily hit the ground. And that also explains, the impact and scope of it, because it doesn't hit the ground. All these are nice little test cases. Yeah.
For lack of a better term, they're always kind of like, well, who's got the bigger balls now?
Okay, all right, there we go. What it does is it gives them more leverage. Gives them more leverage, especially when they want to sit down and negotiate. Again, you brought up North Korea, which is a good point. In that, why are they doing this? There's a number. They talk about protection and all that stuff. But they have been rather isolated. So if they can somehow find a way to get to the peace table, to break that isolation, break the sanctions, one might say they're going to do that. Even though they know that there's going to be some pushback, primarily from the United States, possibly from China, and possibly from Russia. So big stuff there. It's a good point that brought up. Now, the scientists that are there, that were in that little clip here, they talk about, it's a crazy time. It's a crazy time here. And these scientists are part of the development of these stronger weapons here. And so when we talk about freedom to research, and so this is kind of an extension of what we had talked about with the chemical weapons in the First World War. How far is the development of scientific knowledge dependent on decisions made by political authorities or governments? How far? What do we think on that? Some of you in here are going to be scientists, researchers.
All funding. So that aspect, the second the U.S. government decided that we wanted that, and the Soviets responded. It's just more national attention went to it, yes, but that means more money's going to fall.
Okay, so the research is going to bring some funding. Okay, so does that, so when we look at the development of scientific knowledge, it's dependent on the funding?
For projects like that, like a brand new nuclear bomb or more.
Okay.
It's rather expensive.
Yes, yes, it is expensive. It's expensive. Go ahead.
I really think of it as either way, scientists will be scientists and team theories, and they have their mind set on something. They're bound to it. They're bound to study. I don't think you're really good.
Okay, all right. So there's something, you know, a scientist, they're scientists. Their job is to research. Their job is to inquiry, right? Okay, all right, got it, got it. Nico?
Like the science of logistics of public yes, I think like our discussion of how more like moral ideals of these political leaders of the government could impact organizations like daily factors. If they have their political authorities now different opinions on what is going on, that's probably going to impact the amount of flexibility the scientists have. Like our government could easily send out like a police force or something to like stop some scientific exploration because they don't agree with it because goes against like what they believe their government represents.
Okay.
And then, like science and like politics are very, they can be intertwined, but they're also very completely different things. That they conflict with each other.
All right, you threw a lot of nuggets in there. You threw morality, you threw some ethics, you threw some political thoughts in there. That's a lot. That's a lot to chew on. But I think that does go into, you know, how far. All right, go ahead, Carson.
I think it kind of almost depends on like the government system.
Okay.
If you have like a very free market economy, or the lots of fair economy where the government just kind of do what you want, I think corporations will get to choose kind of where they their money toward.
Right.
They research. Like, you see, like nowadays, like a lot of money's going into advanced space travel. Even though for years and years and years, especially after like the Cold War, our funding for like NASA cut back.
Yep.
Then you look at like a more society where the government funds a lot of things, maybe one Europe or on the Soviet Union, and they'll get kind of put the money towards what they want. So I think it's kind of can be really dependent on the government system when you're looking at specifically that question.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. And I guess here in the United States, it's public versus private research, and with that, with the development of research, private or public, you know, when you go with the public, there might be a little bit more boxes you need to check versus the private. All right. Think about. Let's talk about, you know. Go ahead.
I was just going to talk about that, you know, kind of second guessing myself what I said earlier. The way that the vaccine this year rolled out.
Okay.
It's a question. And honestly, I think what politics does in the science world is just push agendas. You know, like, well, this is really important to us, so here, do this right now. Pretty much go on doing whatever they want after that until they're asked to do something specific.
Okay. You're right. And again, with the public, there is an agenda, and it depends on perhaps which party's in charge that could set that particular agenda. Now, what we saw with, you know, you brought up the vaccine with COVID-19, you know, Operation Warp Speed and all that stuff took away some of the red tape, some of those boxes that you need to check. And so then it was the dash to see who can come up with the vaccine. And, you know, by December, a vaccine is there. And we start seeing the rollout of it. However, there might be some you know, did some things get missed along the way that we are now that is now coming out. All right. So, but again, when we look at it, you got scientists and you got government. They may be on the same page. They may not be on the same page. Public versus private, all that stuff comes into play here. We do know, though, during the Cold War, when it came time to develop nuclear weapons, you know, it was about, or weapon technology, it was about who was first, because if you came in second, you need to hit the grind a little bit harder here. And you can see, you know, in the United States, we led the way, and, you know, with the atomic bomb, the hydrogen bomb, but then when it came to the intercontinental ballistic missile, the first satellite, the early warning radar, Soviet Union, but then all of a sudden with the surface or the submarine launched ballistic missiles, United States, but then when it came to anti-ballistic missiles, it came to the Soviets, then came to MIRVs, which when we talk about MIRVs, those are multiple independent re-entry vehicles. That was like a game changer. You saw nuclear missiles launch, and you thought, okay, you're dealing with just one nuclear missile, and then all of a sudden, boom, the head opens up, and out comes multiple nuclear missiles. And then it's like, what the heck? But hard to defend against that piece there. And of course, by 1983, we're going to come up with the Strategic Defense Initiative, or sometimes called Star Wars. All that stuff. All right, and some of that Star Wars technology is in your cell phone anyhow. GPS is a product of Star Wars. So you got all those pieces that go along with it. You know, it was this inquiry, this desire for nuclear weapons to one up, you know, all was under the idea of protection and making sure that we are ready. The Cold War crisis that you are looking at any moment, if the two superpowers decide to take it up another level, it would mean pushing a button and game on. Of all these Cold War crises that you're looking at, there is one that we're very close to pushing that button. And that would be the Cuban Missile Crisis. That would be the closest, big time. The Afghanistan one, you know, the Cold War is starting to kind of wind down here. Conventional seems to be it. All right. So there we go. Any thoughts? Any final thoughts on this? Okay. If there are none, what I will do is I will give you this moment now to get back and work on the Cold War crises activity. Remember, you are focusing on 3 regions, and in each region, you pick one of the crises. You've got 4 choices how to put this thing together. It is due Friday. All right, so let's work hard and have success. With that, those at home, you can stay on.